Welcome to today's presentation, Integrating Chef Automate with ServiceNow Incident Management. Let's go ahead and get started. Davey, why don't you kick us off by telling our audience what we'll be covering here today?
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you. Hi, folks. Many thanks for joining, and welcome to our webinar introducing Chef Automate's initial integration with ServiceNow. So, as Jamie mentioned, I'm Davey McAleer, and I look after the Partner Integration Engineering team that's responsible for Chef's integrations with our ISVs and cloud partners. Firstly, a quick review of the agenda for today. I'll be giving a quick overview of our incident app for ServiceNow. Then Martin will walk through a demonstration of the various parts of the integration and how it works with real examples. We'll walk through any questions that come in from your good selves out there. I'll then briefly go over the future roadmap that we have planned for ServiceNow, and then how to get started with this initial integration as soon as possible, because that's what we want you to do. We want you to use it and give us feedback. So ServiceNow. ServiceNow is one of the most requested integrations from our enterprise customers, and we've spent a considerable amount of time working through the requested use cases, coming up with proof of concepts, and then demoing these to a subset of our customers in order to get feedback that we can fold into the end products. This does not mean we are finished, however. We want to get the initial implementations out into the field as quickly as possible and get more feedback from customers about what they feel are necessary additions and further use cases that they have with ServiceNow and Chef Automate. During this webinar, we'll give an introduction to the functionality within our ServiceNow incident app and the changes we've made within Automate to allow us to interface with ServiceNow in a straightforward and painless way. Firstly, I'm going to walk through an overview of how we've gone about the design of the integration and the various flows that occur with Chef client run failures and compliance scan failures, and how those progress through to the customer's ServiceNow instance. Then I'll hand over to Martin, who will give a demonstration of the actual failures occurring and what the various screens look like on both the ServiceNow side and the Chef Automate side, and how we've set up some configuration options within ServiceNow to allow grouping of incidents to avoid unnecessary noise within your incident management workflows. So what does it do? The base capabilities of the app are to raise incidents within ServiceNow's incident management functionality in order to alert large enterprises that they have a failed configuration management event or else a failed compliance scan event. So, if your estate under management has not had a successful cookbook execution or compliance scan, you should know about it and be able to action a change within the correct team to fix the problem. Incidents can be grouped by the cookbook that has caused the failure or by the node that has a failure. When grouping by failed cookbook, a record of all nodes will be kept against that failed cookbook to understand the extent of the impact. When grouping by failed node, all Chef client run failure events will be collated against each particular node that they occur on. Likewise, for compliance scans, incidents can be grouped by the particular InSpec profile that has recorded a failure against a set of nodes, with each failed node listed underneath the main incident, thus giving an actionable list of hosts to look at remediating. Alternatively, again, grouping can be done by node, with a list of failed profile events against each host. You would likely only do this in a test setup scenario. We manage the creation of these incidents by firing off a ServiceNow custom notification from Automate 2. We've implemented the required authentication in Automate to allow this to now work correctly. The grouping and ordering of incidents is done within the ServiceNow app, and the method by which the grouping is done is configurable within the Configuration tab in our ServiceNow app, as you will see shortly. Knowing which parts of your infrastructure are not configured correctly or that are not compliant is essential to ensuring the overall security and compliance of your estate is as tight as possible. Having an actionable list of organized incidents assigned to the correct teams is the main purpose of this initial ServiceNow app from Chef. Now, I'll pass the stage across to Martin Scott to walk through exactly how this works within both Automate 2 and the ServiceNow platform. Please fire any questions. I see a few already. Oh, actually, can folks mute that aren't already? It shouldn't be. Okay, I'll fire on, see where we get to. Please fire any questions you have into the Q&A section, and we'll try to answer as many as we can towards the end of the session. So with that, I shall hand across to Martin Scott, who's one of the principal engineers on the partner engineering team. Martin will take a second or two to share his screen, and the slides should still be available if you need them. And then he'll walk through the actual workings of the application. So Martin, can I hand across to yourself?
Thank you, Davey. Hi, I'm Martin Scott, Principal Engineer at Chef. I'm going to walk through the Chef ServiceNow incident application and its integration with Chef Automate. Good place to start on the screen share here is the Automate documentation for ServiceNow integration. The application is a certified ServiceNow application available from the store. And at its simplest, we push notifications for failed client runs and failed InSpec scans from the Chef Automate server to ServiceNow instance and to the application within the ServiceNow instance. So as I mentioned, you can download from the store and install on any ServiceNow instance. But one of the most important things for the application, of course, is the security. And here I'd just like to touch, before we do a demonstration of the application, on the user roles that I will be demonstrating with today. We have three main user roles in the application, which are the admin, user, and API roles. The API role is the role you would assign to a user to integrate with Chef Automate. And the application itself provides a REST API, and Chef Automate sends notifications to that REST API, and this is the role required by any user that wishes to submit a notification to our ServiceNow application via that REST API. The user role is the everyday user within ServiceNow for the application, and they can manage the Chef client runs and the InSpec scan records and instance within the application. The admin role is given to an admin user of the application. That is essentially the same role as the user, but with two more features. The admin user can also configure the application through the properties screen and can view the debug info, warning or error logs within the application. So now if I come over to my ServiceNow instance, I'm going to impersonate the user, Chef admin user. So this user has the Chef admin role I just mentioned. And here we see the ServiceNow application, the Chef instance application. And we see the menu items underneath this, which are the client runs. As you can see, I have some client runs already populated. We have the InSpec scans. I have also some InSpec scan records populated. The properties, which is, as I just mentioned, only available to an administration user, as are the application logs. And the final menu item we have is simply our support link for anyone that forgets where the Chef support website is and wishes just to link out to Chef support when using the application. So now let's go back and touch on the client runs. Here I have a client run I created earlier with on my node that's attached to my Chef Automate server. And in that client run, we have a tab which shows the details of the Chef Automate server, which has raised this notification to our application. We have the domain name of the server. We also have the Automate failure URL for the particular client run, and a small snippet of information on what the failure was. If I click on the failure URL, it launches me directly through to Chef Automate, and I can view the error log, and I can say that my cookbook failed because I could not determine the group ID for bogus users on the system. If I return my Chef client run, I can see that my field cookbook is custom Apache, and I can look at the full error details, including the exception message, title, and the full stack trace in my client run record. And here we see the error message that we cannot determine the group ID for bogus users on the system. Now, I also point out that for this client run, an incident has been raised in ServiceNow. So I'm going to open the incident record, and we see that the incident record has been raised by Chef API. Now, this user is the Chef API user, which has the role that I pointed out in the documentation, the API role. And this user and this client run have been configured in Chef Automate, which I'll get to in a moment. We also notice here that we have a Chef client run that has failed for the cookbook custom Apache. And we have a description of that, which includes the error that we couldn't find the group ID for bogus users on the system. And I also scroll down through the incident and note that for all client runs, Chef client runs that have failed for that incident, they will be grouped, for that cookbook, they will be grouped beneath this Chef client runs tab on the incident record. So I'll drop back to the properties page to discuss that. And as Davey mentioned in his presentation before this, we can associate Chef client run failures with a cookbook or a node. Our default setting is cookbook. And I performed these Chef client runs earlier today with the Chef client run earlier today with the property set to cookbook. Now, if I click through on the second Chef client run, you see again we have a converge failure for custom Apache with the same error. So we have another Chef client run has failed for this error, but this time we have a different incident. And we note here that this incident has failed, a Chef client run failed for node 1, Ubuntu. So this has failed for on the node rather than for the cookbook. And when this Chef client run was run, the properties that we just pointed out was set to node. Now, how do these Chef client runs get into ServiceNow? I would just pop over to my Chef Automate. We have the notification menu, and in here I have two ServiceNow notifications, one for the client runs and one for InSpec scans. If I was integrating with a ServiceNow application, I would simply add a new notification, select the ServiceNow notification, and then select the failure type. So I select the failure type if it's Chef client runs or InSpec scans, and then I enter the REST endpoint for whichever API we wish to use on the ServiceNow application. And the URL for the webhook for that endpoint is simply the ServiceNow instance, followed by API, then our application identifier, which is x_chef_incident. It's version 1 and it's client run. And it's very similar for the InSpec scans. And here we can enter our user details, our password, and then we would save the notification. So we enter the credentials, and that's all we need, the credentials in the endpoint and the type of failure that we want to notify on our application. I'll cancel out as I have both these set up already. And of course, that configuration is also highlighted in our documentation and runs through how to configure both the client runs and the InSpec scans in Chef Automate. Now, if I nip back to ServiceNow, if we also look at my incident that was for the node 1, it also will list any Chef client runs on a Chef client run tab. Now, There's another way to look at instance raised before we touch on the InSpec scans. And if I look at the incident menu in ServiceNow, I can see all my instances that I have currently raised, which include InSpec scans and client runs. I've added a few filters just to make it slightly easier to look at. So this is the incident I have for a chef client run for a failed cookbook, and you can see that that's failed for the cookbook custom patchy. I have another filter which will show me any client runs that failed by node. And as we move on to InSpec scans, I'll show the InSpec scans by profile. This is slightly different here, as I've more than I did for simply one incident for the chef client run. So I'm going to go back to the Chef Automate and look at scan jobs. Now, just before the webinar, I created 3 different scans, InSpec scans, on my node. The first was the scan by profile, followed by a second scan by profile, and then the scan by node. Now, for the scan by profile, recall the properties. We use the default association with InSpec scans to instance of scan by profile. For the scan by node, I then changed that to scan by node and done a further scan. So if I look back here, I have my 3 InSpec scans, and when I scan by profile, I expect to see an InSpec scan record for any failed profile. And if I go back to my incident record, I will also see the incidents for those Chef InSpec scans. So if I filter by InSpec scans by profile, we see we have 3 incidents created, each for different profiles. If I pick the first one in the list here, we have a Chef InSpec scan has failed for the profile CAS Ubuntu 16.04 Level 2 server. And if I scroll down, as we did with the Chef client runs, we note here that we have 2 InSpec scan records for that failed incident. Now I'm going to click on the first one that created, and here we have, similar to the Chef client runs, a Chef Automate tab which gives us the failure URL for the InSpec scan, an error message that we found a critical control failure on the node, and we also have the Automate domain name. So I click through on that. That takes me through to our compliance scan for that node, and we can see the list of the total controls running the node which have failed and the full detail. We don't keep all this detail in ServiceNow. In ServiceNow, you just keep the detail of the profile that's failed, and this is the drill down in Automate 2 for the failure of that profile. We'll keep the test details from the scan run, which is the number of tests, the number which were skipped or passed, and which have failed. And we have a Profiles tab, which lists the failed profiles. Now, in the case of associating a Chef InSpec scan with an incident by profile, this will only ever contain one profile. And as we see, we have an incident that we were just looking at, which is the incident for that failed profile. And if I go back to my Chef Automate and my scan jobs, where I ran a scan twice, so I do see the 2 scan records for this profile, and that profile failed both times. Go back to my incidents and use my little filter again on my profiles. That's similar for these other profiles, the Linux baseline and the SSH baseline. These profiles also fail. So we have an incident for those. We have the Linux baseline fail. We scroll down. As we'd expect, from the 2 InSpec scans, we have 2 InSpec scan records for that failed profile. And we have another incident for failed SSH baseline. And if I go back to my instance again, I also created a filter for InSpec scans by node. And I have, in this case, one incident because I have one node, so I have one incident for that node. And the description in that instance suggests that the InSpec scan has failed for that node. If I scroll down, I will see that I have one InSpec scan failure record for that node. If I click through on that, this one lists all the profiles that have failed in that node because we're associating the InSpec scan run with the node, in this case, and not the profile. Of course, we can view all this from the InSpec scan record list as well, but with those filters I added the incident, it makes it slightly more clear as to what we got, as we have 7 scans here. If I would click on the one at the bottom there, I see I have my SSH baseline failure, which would link through to my incident, which would show me we have an incident for failed SSH baseline profile. Now, any nodes that would fail in that would all be associated with this incident. So if I go back to ServiceNow, I think it's a good time to actually show this in action by creating a new scan job. And I will pick these profiles which have been failing. And before I save that, I will go to the Properties menu, and I will associate my InSpec scans by node. And we'll kick off that scan. That will take a few moments to run. We'll go back to ServiceNow. And as you can see now, we also have the logs here, which my admin user can view, and the properties. While my scan is running, I'll walk through these properties, all of which are covered in our installation and configuration guide. So we give the option when you create an incident that it can be assigned to a user, or either we assign it to a group of users. So I'll decide that I'm going to assign this one to myself. We can change the impact or the urgency of an incident record. So I'm going to set both of these values to 1. The number of days to retain a chef client run, I'll come back and touch on that after. Logging is disabled by default. We're going to enable the logging. And we have 4 logging levels for the application: debug, info, warn, and error. And I will set that to debug. And I will also save the association of the client run to node and save those properties. I go back to Chef Automate and see how my webinar scan is still running. But what I expect to see from that by node, if I go back and look at my incidents and filter those incidents, InSpec scans by node, I have one incident. I don't expect to see a new incident because my scan is in the same node. What I do expect to see when that completes is that I have another InSpec scan record created and will be associated with this incident. And of course, being a live demo, are usually fairly fast scans, running slow. But there we have it. The webinar scan by node has completed. And if I refresh my incident, I will see that it's now assigned to me, Martin Scott. The impact of the incident is now high, as is the urgency, as per the properties we changed in the properties page. And I also scroll down and see now I have a second InSpec scan created for the node, which shows that these profiles are all failing. Now, if I were to do that for a client run as well, which I've set to node, I'll do a knife run. And I should say my cookbook failure again. Yes, and there my client run has finished. Go to the client runs. We have a new client run. converge failure and custom Apache. We cannot determine the group ID for bogus users. If we open up the incident, we see that the incident is assigned to me, Martin Scott, and we have high impact and high urgency. This is, of course, as we said, an incident for this node, and now this incident has 2 Chef client run failures associated with it. So that's a brief demo of everything as it works, and I'll now go through the remaining properties, which are the number of days to retain Chef client run and InSpec scan records. And this is our arbitrary 30 days we chose because we've no idea what our users are going to want, how long they want to retain records. But once an incident has been closed or deleted, or the relationship between an incident and a client run or InSpec scan has been removed, then those records will remain in the system and be deleted by Chef. They will remain in days on the system. So you can set this to 0, and as soon as you've closed your instance, the next scheduled run of the background jobs that delete the records will pick those up and delete any of those old Chef client run and InSpec scan records from the table. Now, to demonstrate that, I shall log back to myself, my system's admin user, and look at the scheduled jobs in the system. And here we have 2 jobs, Chef delete client run schedule and a Chef delete InSpec scan schedule. They run every 30 minutes, and according to the rules that we've seen there in our property configuration, they will delete records from the table. So if I execute that rule now and go back to my Chef instant client runs, I see no difference because the property hasn't been set. My incidents are open. So what I'll do now, I'll go and pick up incident 82 for my Chef client run field on the node, and note that it has 2 client runs associated with it. I'm just going to delete this incident. So I still have my 3 client runs. If I go to the scheduled job again, and run my scheduled job now, again, nothing will happen as we have the property set for every 30 days. But if I wanted to get rid of those records today, I would simply set that property to 0. And in 30 minutes time, the next run of my scheduled job, those records would be deleted. And I'll just shortcut that by executing it now. I save those properties. And there's our first howler of the evening. There we go. Scheduled job is now run and deleted those 2 client runs that were associated with the incident that I deleted. And that would be the same for the InSpec scan records. Now, the other user I mentioned was the Chef user. I'm going to log in again as the Chef user. And we see the main difference here in this incident application is the Chef user can see the client runs, can see my incidents, can see all my InSpec scans, can see the support link, but they can't modify any of the properties the admin user can do, and they cannot see the logs. And that about wraps it up for the live demo. So I'm going to hand back to Davey, and we'll move on, and I'll look through any questions that have come in and see what answers I can come up with. Okay, Davey, are you ready to take over?
Yep. Thanks very much, Martin. The demo gods were fairly kind to you there. I think there was only one wee slip up at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, that was just a timing issue. Thank you.
So, folks, before I jump to some questions about the demo itself, I'll do a quick run through of the next app that we're currently demoing with some of our customer base, and we're getting to a productized state, and also our future ideas around our roadmap. So the next app we're currently working on, we're aiming to get this released in Q4 this year, is for CMDB synchronization functionality. This takes the configuration management information we hold and automate for every node in the estate and populates the CI records within ServiceNow on a regularly updated and configurable basis. The intention is that we populate installed software along with updated software package information into the CI records that are held in ServiceNow, and also any cookbooks that are in the run list for a particular node. We're also looking at a follow-on phase where we can provide an audit status for nodes within the CMDB and confirm which nodes in the estate are compliant with both their expected configuration management status and any compliance scans that have been executed against them during the previous Chef client run. So this is what it looks like at present for our roadmap. We'll then look at building an orchestration application. The proof of concept will start to be built out in the coming months. However, we've no further details at this stage, so we need to do some experimentation and review as we work through that process and see how that will look and see how we'll build it out. So questions, let me check. So we have a couple of questions in the background here. So the first one, with ServiceNow, can we track only InSpec and Chef client failures? In this initial app, yes. So we're tracking InSpec compliance scan failures, and we're checking Chef client run failures. As I said, we're working on a CMDB synchronization app where we'll be looking at success conditions, obviously, in terms of the information that we hold within each node in your estate with a Chef client contained on it, and we're going to pass that through. We'll also be looking at successful Chef client runs, and also hopefully in the near future, successful compliance scan runs. And that builds quite a compelling set of information that we can hold as a single pane of glass in the ServiceNow side of things. So I'll move on to the next question here. The ServiceNow integration, is this possible with Automate 1.8.x? So the ServiceNow integration is only possible with our Automate 2 update to Automate, and I'll come back to that shortly on the getting started side of things. At present, that's where we've put the new notification type for ServiceNow, as Martin showed on the Automate 2 UI. Let me see, what was the other question there? Can we use Service First, a product of ServiceNow? We've recently moved from ServiceNow to Service First. Suresh, that's your question. I'll have to come back to that one, and I'll come back to that after the call. I'm not 100% sure on Service First. It depends if it can use the ServiceNow App Store. If it can, then it's possible. If it's a subset of the ServiceNow functionality for the incident management side of ServiceNow, but I will have to come back to you on that one. And we have one more question then. How do you trigger the automatic creation of the service incident ticket from the, looks like Chef client runs? So I think Martin's already answered this within his demo. Hopefully that was answered for you. So that's the automatic creation of those is within, if you look at the instructions that are linked on the final slide, It's actually from the notification that we set up in Automate 2, the ServiceNow notification. Every failure that happens for a Chef client run or a compliance scan gets sent across into ServiceNow, and then we group them depending on how you've configured ServiceNow. So, getting started. How do you get started with this, and how do you start using it? Because we absolutely want you to use this, and we want to get your feedback on your experiences. So first of all, as I said, you need Automate 2. You need Chef Automate 2, and to get that, either speak to your account team if you already have an installation, or use the Quick Start A2, which is available actually from a similar location to Martin has shown in the documentation, and from that link that I have on this final slide. Then if you go to add the app from the ServiceNow instance, from your own ServiceNow instance, if you do that from the ServiceNow App Store, the app is free and has been available for quite some time, just about a month at this stage on the App Store. That's the best way to do that. And then the documentation. So Martin actually walked through at the start of his presentation, he walked through the documentation around this. It should be fairly comprehensive. We hope it is. If you have any issues whatsoever, please get in contact with us through the support addresses or else through our community Slack, our customer success Slack, and give us any updates, and we will certainly update that as quickly as humanly possible if there are any issues. I'm just going to have a quick check for any last questions in case there are any new ones. Just a quick question there. Will this demo be available offline to review later? Yes, it absolutely will. So Jimmy talked about that, and Jimmy, maybe you can talk about that again once I hand back across to you, just to make sure everyone's aware where they can get it from. So I don't see any further questions there. And I think that about wraps it up from myself for today, and from Martin. Martin, thank you very much. Many thanks to all of you as well for attending. It's been a pleasure to see the quite large numbers that have come online at the same time of us. Thank you very much. I will hand you back to Jimmy, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much. Jimmy?
Thanks, Davey, and thanks, Martin, for that awesome demo. Great information there. Reminder, copy of today's slide deck and additional help materials, including the links that Davey was just mentioning, are available in the resource list widget at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to download the slide deck and bookmark any of the links there that you might find useful. We, of course, hope you found value in the information that Davey and Martin presented today. If you like what you saw, we encourage you to share the recorded presentation with your teammates or professional networks. The on-demand version should be available by tomorrow, and we'll email you as soon as it's ready. You'll be able to access it using the same audience link that you're using now. Thanks again for your time, and have a wonderful day.